Hi guys, welcome back to Crossman Productions. Man, I am so excited, guys, to be back. It's been, I don't know, probably about 2 weeks since we've, got a chance to sit down and talk to somebody. Just the outside work schedule is just so dang crazy, man. The last 2 weeks, I was just telling Matt that I've been doing 12 to 16 hour shifts. It's just been crazy, crazy work up there. But happy to have a job, pays the bills, so can't really complain about that. And I like my job. I like the guys I work with up there too. So, it is what it is. Pays the bills, so we're good. So my next guest. Now, Matt was supposed to be on last week, and so I had some scheduling issues. But we were able to get him to come back this week. But Matt has a couple of podcasts. He does live interviews, and he also does one where they do reviews of horror films, which ironically is my daughter's favorite genre of films. So she's going to be excited to see this and hear what all Matt has to say about some of the films out there. We'll get into it. We'll talk about some of those films. But I'm going to bring Matt in. We're going to get to talk to Matt, get to learn a little bit more about Matt. What's up, brother?
Hey, how's it going?
Man, it's been crazy. It's been crazy. But and I apologize for last week. I know we were scheduled to come on last week, and I had a scheduling conflict in the last moment. Work.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm glad you made it in, man.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, like I said, no, it's no problem. Life happens. It's the life of a podcaster, right?
Right, man. So, you and I have a mutual friend, Steve. Steve introduces me to a lot of great people. And so he was like, called me up. He's like, hey, get Matt on the show. Matt's got a great, podcast and cool guy. So, I wanted to bring you in and, kind of talk to you and get to know a little bit more about you and what you do.
All right, sounds good.
So cool. So we'll start when I always start. Kind of tell my audience, introduce yourself, and kind of tell my audience a little bit about like kind of where you were born and raised and what was life like for Matt growing up.
Yeah, so as you can see, I go by technically online graveyard is my online persona. Just because you've seen my last name, it's stupidly hard to spell and say for most people. So,
Right.
So yeah, it's graveyard for like online, but you can call me Matt. That's my actual name. So yeah, I mean, I'm outside Chicago residence, just Northwest Indiana here, and yeah, life has been life, right? It's interesting to say the least. Yeah, I was just, like I said, born and raised in Northwest Indiana, and I've really developed a love of horror movies as a kid. I remember my first one being Jaws, and scaring the crap out of me because I was like 3 with it, and I was so afraid of going underwater, and I still am being underwater. But I remember my older sisters being able to scare the crap out of me by just playing the Jaws theme on the piano.
Wow.
And like, so I eventually kind of grew out of it. But when I was about 5 or 6, we went to Universal Studios in Florida.
Okay.
And of course, there was the Jaws ride. And
Right.
lo and behold, the shark came exactly where I was sitting.
Well.
So
no.
But after that,
Yeah.
I found real love of horror movies with Child's Play and everything. After that, we can talk more about too.
Cool. So that kind of developed into like this love of doing films about horror movies. So how did that kind of develop? Where did you kind of start?
For the podcast?
No, for the to start filming your own horror movies.
Okay. So that actually came from I'm on a couple different YouTube channels as well as the top of my own. So I started at other people's channels that I'm still part of. One being Distance Nerding, and they interview independent creators, whether it's comic books, voiceover artists, and stuff like that. And about 15, 16 months ago, they were at a convention and they go, "Hey, you make horror movies. We have a horror guy that would love to talk to you."
Oh, wow.
So his name's Dylan Brown. He's part of the Horror Dads production. He came on and he's like, "Oh man, I'd love to have you out here and be in one of the movies." I go, "Great." He's like, "Where are you at?" He goes, "Reno." I go, "Okay, I'm Chicago, so that's a bit of a for me." And he goes, "Hold on, there's a guy not that far from you that's part of our team as well." And so I was introduced to him, and 3 weeks later, I was at his house for a long weekend filming a movie.
Oh, wow.
So it was an interesting progression just to be there as a PA and getting to see how that process worked, because I'd always done smaller skits and sketches and shorts when YouTube started.
Right.
And at that point in time, you can only do 10-minute videos.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I don't, this, how stupid I was then, this isn't going anywhere. So I kind of set it aside for like 15 years.
Oh, wow.
But now
15 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was some of the earlier adopters of YouTube with the stuff.
Right.
So yeah, because I was a backyard wrestler in high school and we recorded all our stuff too. So I would take in those old videos and then editing them in FFmpeg X on the Mac back in 2006, 2007, and upload them into YouTube. So if you really scour the internet, you can find a young version of me on the internet still.
Wow. Yeah, I forgot all about that, because when YouTube first came out, they were shorter videos, and there was a lot of backyard wrestling videos.
Yes, there was.
That's kind of like the trend back then. That was crazy, man, because you see these guys, on top of the roof of their house, jumping on tables and
It's funny because back in VH1 days, because I'm aging myself here as well, that Jack Black had submission that you're able to submit your YouTube videos to VH1. And we didn't get aired. However, our stuff ended up on Spike TV.
Wow. Man. So then you went into podcasting. And then, so let me talk to you about some of that, because you do live interviews with people. Who's the most memorable guest that you had on?
Most memorable, just for as an acting flair that I had, was Jeffrey Wiseman, who replaced Crispin Glover as the dad in Back to the Future 2 and 3.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he's such a character actor, and he was just putting on an absolute show as an artist.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so it was really interesting just because he's having the flair. He was like touching the curtains to his face and just went full on method actor. And it was, as far as I've had a number of actors on, but he was just the most memorable, because he was just like, all right, and scene. Like he was done.
So he did a live, like in person, or?
I do everything live on the internet. It's through StreamYard, just like what you use. And we do it every Wednesday. So yeah, that's our live part. We have another show that we do called the Mostly Pod Out at Night Mostly, which is our pre-recorded movie review show that we do as well. Okay.
All right, cool. Now let's talk about that too. So you guys are out there reviewing movies. What's the biggest difference between the movies that you grew up on and the movies that are out now?
I would say the best of the way to put it is, if you really think of like the early horror movies, like Tobe Hooper, Wes Craven, John Carpenter, they were independent movies.
Right.
They were low budget, maybe $100,000, maybe $200,000. And it wasn't a cash grab at that point in time. It was a group of friends and crew that were very intimate making the movies.
Right.
So you look at that, and then you go, okay, let's go ahead and go make The Conjuring and try to make $2 billion.
Right.
So I'd say the early horror movies, especially, were more independent and less mainstream and less cash cows,
Yeah.
obviously.
Right.
So you can have a good movie with a low budget.
Right. Yeah. We're starting to see that a lot too since the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of independent filmmakers coming out, and they have more tools
Mm-hmm.
and media to be able to get out, different films. We have a group out there in Florida with Heather Fraley and Bobby Washington. There's a whole group out there that's doing films. Group in Arkansas. Jason Pitts.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Pitts. He's doing. I don't know if you. I'll have to introduce you to Jason, but Jason does a fandom film of Jason Voorhees,
Okay.
and so he has a film of Jason versus Bigfoot.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's right up my alley. Jason's kind of one of my man here.
yeah. Uh, so one of the guys that comes on our show quite often, his name's James Stokes. He actually plays Jason, and
Okay.
yeah, you'll love Jason. And James actually goes to schools dressed as Jason and talks to kids about bullying.
Oh.
So he shows up at school dressed in full on Jason gear and walks
Mm-hmm.
through the class and talks to kids about bullying. So he's super
That's
cool
awesome.
guy. Yeah. I'll have to introduce you so you can have him on your show.
Yeah.
But yeah, this since the pandemic, they've had there's such a big influx of such great, talented directors and producers coming out doing independent films. So
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's absolutely my co-host and I, Salem, who's right here in our picture. I'm right here. We make the analogy is that the independent world and horror never went away the
right,
way that we think it did.
right,
Because if you think about the video nasties of the 80s,
right,
where everyone was making a copy of a VHS, right? And that's the
right,
only way you got in the shelves. That's how you did it. VHS was king. Everyone recorded straight to VHS, and that's how you made your movie.
right,
It's the same thing today, except we just have a different technology to do it.
right,
And we're able to distribute it better now with likes of Shudder, Tubi, all these other great platforms. So it's there, but you're able to access it now instead of just walking to your mom and pop shop and hoping they have something new.
right. You brought up a good point too, because some of the older independent films, I think are just the way that they were made
Mm-hmm.
was scarier than
Yes.
some of these big pre-production multi-million-dollar movies. Yeah. So my daughter, I'll say at the beginning, my youngest daughter is a huge horror fan. She loves The Conjuring. She's a big, Stranger Things, Fair Street. She loves
Yes.
Fair Street. Yeah, anything that comes out that's like these new horror films, she goes and sees. I don't know, and we'll be sitting there and when I get home from work, she'll want to sit and watch a movie, and every single time she wants to put on some scary movie. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah,
Nothing wrong with that.
right. So I'm surprised that she's not out actually filming movies. Try to do her own scary films, but probably will. When she figures out, well, takes one of my cameras and just goes
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, that's how I started. I remember being probably about 12,
right,
and the Curse of Michael Myers, so Halloween 6 came out, and I remember renting it. And my buddy had, as a kid, he had a video camera, and we started making our own Halloween fan films at
Yeah.
12.
Wow.
With one of us playing Dr. Loomis, we didn't realize that Donald Pleasance was dead at that point in time. So, but we were doing our own film stuff and writing our own stories and just having a ball. So it's always been there for me.
Right.
It's just went through spurts in my life.
Wow. Let me ask you this. So this is going to be a two-part question.
Mhm.
What's the scariest independent film you've ever seen? And what's the scariest modern or whatever, the big production movie?
That is tough for me because unfortunately, I'm very desensitized at this point in time
Right.
to horror movies. I think what gives probably the most chills as an independent is hands-on Evil Dead.
Okay.
That was a low budget. It was a group of friends who made it. Obviously, everyone knows Evil Dead, right? But it was like the quintessential independent movie where the styles of the camera work that Sam Raimi did is now finally in the past 20 years being integrated into mainstream Hollywood. So he invented the Steadicam. He invented all these things to do it. But that was the innovation of an independent film company.
Right.
Now, probably the scariest, biggest budget, I would have to say, would be Event Horizon.
Okay.
I don't find newer horror movies to be generally that scary.
Right.
that are big budget, because they look too clean.
Right.
Yeah, they're too polished for me.
Let me do this. Like when you watch a scary film,
Mhm.
are you one of the guys that's like looking and you're like picking out how they do special effects or makeup and
I yes and no. I do IT for a living. I don't
Right.
know how to do full VFX, but I kind of look at logistics of that. But I enjoy the movie for the story, for the characters, and honestly, the special effects don't really necessarily matter as long as they're not like glaring Sharknado type stuff. It generally doesn't do that. What I have found though with doing this podcast for about 3 years now is I have a hard time watching the movie just without going into analyzing what I like, what I didn't like, and start categorizing it out to do a review for it. So we had that. I noticed that when Alien Romulus came out, I'm going, all right, we have to see it twice. Once to enjoy it, and then once to kind of take it apart.
Yeah, try to review it. So we've done a couple of movie reviews for different films. I have actors that come on and we'll watch their film and then we'll come back and give our review. Doing a movie review is harder than what it sounds. If you get caught up in the moment, you're watching the movie, and then I don't know, maybe I'm biased because I know the people that's in the film. They're like, hey, go see the movie, so I go watch it. And then when I get my movie review, I'm like, okay, they did a great job at acting or whatever, and then I find it harder to pick it apart.
So our general rule is we keep these two worlds separate that we do. With Conversations of the Void, we talk to a lot of independent creators. I'm not there, especially as an independent creator myself, to pick apart independent creators' work. I will go after, movies are 50 years old. Yes, they're independent creators, but at that point in time, everyone's seen it. But I have no problems tearing down M. Night Shyamalan. I have no problems tearing down, a Conjuring movie just because, first off, they don't care. They already made their $1 billion, but so it's hard for me just because it took me 100 episodes to finally get a notebook to write everything down. I was doing all of memory of my highlights and low points, and but I will sit here with the notebook while I'm watching the movie. I'm just going, okay, that doesn't make any sense, right? If this happens and this happens, this shouldn't happen. For example, we just recorded 2 nights ago World War II runoff. So Apt Pupil and Bunker and Outpost. And looking at Apt Pupil, the Stephen King book with Ian McKellen, we're going, wait a minute. This is a fantastic movie. However, there's something here that doesn't make a lick of sense.
Right.
So, for example, all right, so there's a kid obsessed with Nazis and the Holocaust who happens to recognize an old man on the bus in his town that just happens to be an SS officer.
Right.
The chances of that happening really, really slim.
Right.
But at the end of the movie, there is a Holocaust survivor that happens to be in the same hospital bed and room as Ian McKellen, who recognizes him. I go, the chances of that never going to happen.
Right.
So the whole premise, the beginning and the end of the movie is off of the suspension of disbelief is too great.
Right. Well, it's funny because I'm writing a television series right now, and you don't think about that. When you're writing it, you start writing things, and then you'll get to about halfway through a scene, or you get a couple scenes later, and you're like, or I would say episodes later, and then you're like, oh wait a minute, this doesn't match up with what I put in the frame. Yeah, so then you have to go do your rewrite and try to make it all line up. But you don't think about it when you're writing, until you go back and review it. And, I think that a lot of movies do that. They forget to go back, and check to make sure everything lines up. But that's the thing about scary movies, anyways, man. There's scary movies, don't always have to make sense because, I mean, how many times does Jason have to die? You know what I mean?
I mean, realistically, he's only died once, technically speaking.
But you have these these movies where they get stabbed, they get burned, they get shot. I like it. It's how many times and I'm talking about just within the movie, like a Scream,
right.
How many times, and then after that shot, his brain's hanging out of his head, his face is burned. That when he's laying there, that he's going to get back up.
Oh yeah. What we typically do with stuff like that is we look at a franchise as a whole,
right?
But we go into the review of this with our suspension of disbelief. Like, okay, we are now in this world. You set up the rules,
right?
You need to follow those rules that you made in your movie,
right?
If you can't do that, that's where we will take it apart a little bit. Because if you go, hey, I have this brand new thing about vampires and they only drive Mercedes. Okay, that's your rule. Fantastic. Right. That's a rule for vampires in your movie. All of a sudden they're driving like a Hyundai.
Right.
Well, you already broke your own rule.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we'll go, okay, well, if we're in your world, make us believe it's your world.
Right.
So obviously this never happened in the movie, but that's just an example.
Right. So now you're making a horror film, right? Are you able to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'll tell you about a little bit of the stuff I've done so far in the past 16 months and a little snippet of what we're coming out as well. So I start off with Split Screen, which was a double feature, a found footage double feature, which hasn't ever been done. So it was one director who did like a 45-minute thing, and we had the rapper, just think like VHS, but like a grindhouse version of it.
Okay.
So I was in the movie. I was an actor as well, but like I said, I was a PA. It was called the Illinois Valley Murder Tapes, and it's about the Clawhammer Killer who goes around and kills people with the Clawhammer Killer. So think like Poughkeepsie tapes, like true crime type stuff.
Right.
And we actually, as assistant director and helping make the movie, I was a killer. I was an actor. I dragged my own wife into the movie to kill her on screen. And that's what we just finished up, and the director finished editing about 2 weeks ago, and that's coming out here in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
That's going to be called Untitled Footage. And so that was our first sequel that I've worked with the team on. Right. Now in July, we had a movie with the team, Horror Dad's production, that is called The Harvester. It was originally going to be a Skinwalker movie, but we realized well, we don't have a budget for a skinwalker. How the hell are we going to pull that off? So, I was kind of looking over the writing of it. And so we had to change completely what the bad guy is.
Right.
So when you change some skinwalker to what we have, which I can't say what it is, you have to change the story. You have to change the lore. You have to change how it moves, how it looks, how it sounds.
Wow.
So it was, a complete, probably 70% rewrite of that movie. And so I went up to Michigan, and we were doing, I think, 14 to 16-hour days to do it. So I got to sit in the makeup chair for the first time, and for about an hour and a half, and just get completely destroyed with makeup.
Wow.
And it was an absolute blast. It's getting in its final edits right now, and that's hopefully coming out here soon. We haven't determined if we're going to do it as part of a split screen 2, so a sequel, something like that, or working out something called Seasonal Fears, where you have the TV show like Into the Dark, where it takes place, once a month over a holiday. We want to do like a Seasonal Fears, where each short is takes place in a season of the year. So we will do 2 releases per year. So one for winter, spring, one for summer, fall, with a group of us, the 4 of us, writing everything and just making a place really to put our short stories and our short films.
Right. Cool. So now, if somebody wants to watch the films, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can go to the Horror Dads website, horrordads.com, and it'll list everything. But it's also, I think, everything's on Tubi.
Okay.
Our Midnight Features, which is a found footage, Tales from the Crypt style show, is on Amazon Prime, and that's called, like I said, that's called Midnight Features, which each has a different director and writer for each movie. Each episode, I was able to film one of them. I was in it, but I was there for the production. I'm currently working on an episode for season 2, and I'm working on 2 other shorts, and I'm writing a trilogy right now as well.
Wow. Oh, you're a busy man.
Yeah, and all my free time, but not working 50 hours a week in my day job. Yeah.
Right. Crazy. So now for your podcast, how could they find you for your podcast?
So the podcast, anywhere you get your podcasts, it's They Mostly Pod Out at Night, mostly. You can get that on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. We even have it on our YouTube page, which is Pod Out at Night, which is where we host our Conversations the Void. So we go live every Wednesday at about 9 p.m. Central, and it's available to watch immediately after it's done as well. And you also see the podcast is listed in our YouTube channel as well, because I integrated that. And all social media is Pod Out at Night, so it's pretty damn easy to find me.
Wow. All right, cool. So, and we'll put those links in the comment field. That way we can go and follow and see what all you're doing. The other thing I was going to ask you, because I know you're in Indiana. What part of Indiana are you from?
Northwest Indiana.
What city? What close? What's the closest city?
Chicago. Technically, I'm 15 miles from Chicago.
Okay.
Or if you really want to get spooky, maybe about 7 miles from Gary, Indiana, where the Demon House was. That the Zach from Ghost Adventures went to. Also, the scariest house in Gary, Indiana, Michael Jackson's house.
Yeah. That's what I was going to tell you, is that I was born and raised in Hammond and grew up in Hammond and Gary.
Oh, I'm Highland.
Oh, in Highland. Okay. So you're not that far. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, we're pretty close. So yeah, that's why I started my first podcast was in Hammond. We did a rap show. We created our own rap videos. So I grew up in a projects in Hammond, and I worked at a White Hen. Is White Hen still out there?
I haven't seen one in a while. I know there was one in Griffith and there was one in Hammond. I haven't seen it in a while though.
Yeah. So I used to work nights at White Hen. It's like a 7-Eleven. So and across the street was the projects, and so I'd leave work and go film videos, go to school, get my GED, and I'd be up for, I don't know, 5 or 6 days. I didn't sleep until my days off, my 2 days off. And then I slept like I slept the entire 2 days. But I popped no-dos, and I just worked straight 5 days doing the show, in the and working. But yeah, dude, that was crazy. It was a great place to actually be the where I first started filming. It was just a great area for us to do what we were doing. The show lasted a year after I left on public access. It's all we had.
Wow.
We just had public access back then. We didn't have YouTube and all that. So we had to go into the studio and actually slice the video and mail. Things have changed so much since then. We used to all record on high 8, or super VHS. So these people don't know how lucky they have it now with the GoPros and all. Yeah, your phone. I mean, you record on your phone now.
I mean, you can. I wouldn't suggest it.
Yeah.
I mean, for some scenes, it makes absolute sense to have your phone because that's the social media platform. Right. And I do integrate technology as an IT person, and with the stuff I'm writing is about social commentary. So horror movies typically are, obviously, but I do have scenes of cell phone usage just because that's how someone would interact with someone. If you wanted to call someone, it's not just picking up the phone and calling them; it's FaceTime, right?
Right. So, but the technology's there. The technology,
yes,
Back then, we didn't have all that stuff. You lugged around. People don't realize how big a super VHS camera is. That thing's huge, man.
Right. I think it's funny though that everyone thinks, oh, I have this cheap piece of technology in my hand, but if you look like the iPhone 15 Max, it's like $2,000. That's not any different than a camcorder,
right?
Price wise.
Well, when the Canon XL came out, which was one of the first really big upgrades to the camera when it went from from VHS to actually putting on cassette. Man, that was huge, and that was like $5,000 for that camera.
Yeah,
when it first came out. But I was so excited because I had a friend in Dallas who was upgrading all of his equipment, and he started doing those 1K videos, and so he was getting rid of all of his Canon XL and all his old cameras, and so he gave me one. He gave me one for the show. I was excited about that. And they had new technology rolling out. He gave me the stuff. I was all for that.
Well, it's funny because I was just gifted a box of old video cameras like a couple of months ago. And now, if you talk to a lot of the independent horror people, is they're now filming on those again.
Yeah,
just to get that 90s and 80s feel without doing the filters and all the fancy stuff, because then you have the authenticity of the VHS.
Right. Wow. Well, it's that nostalgia too. Well, cool, man. Well, I want to thank you, brother, for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
We're I wish I could have got you on last week. I know that things didn't work out. I'm glad you were able to to do the show today. I'm looking forward to going back and seeing some of the stuff that you're working on.
Yeah, so, I have a lot of great stuff planned out. I can't wait for it to come out. 2025 is going to be a great year.
Cool. So now my daughter's like, hey, let's sit down and watch a movie. We'll grab one of your shows and we're going to watch it.
There you go.
All right, cool. All right, guys. Thank you guys for joining us. We have another show lined up for tomorrow. The guy that we have coming in tomorrow is going to be this guy is used to be with Interpol in Iceland. So so he was chasing drug dealers out in Iceland. So we're gonna hear some of the stories that he has. It sounds pretty exciting. So But yes, so tune in tomorrow. Until then, remember, you guys are uniquely designed with a purpose, and always keep moving forward. Peace.